Andrew, if you'd like to go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us what you're going to talk about and then go ahead and do it, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
I will do. Well, I'll just check on sharing the screen that I'm still able to do that. You can see that okay?
Yep, it's looking very good.
Brilliant. Okay. So my name's Andrew Holman. I live down here on the Isle of Wight. I'll be sort of saying what we're doing here in terms of looking at increasing public access to nature and how that fits in with some policies and procedures and so on, but also nice things to do down here in terms of bird watching. Good afternoon to everybody. I hadn't realised I was going to be talking to some local people as well, so that's a bit more scary. I might have to rewrite some bits in this chat. But Graham, first of all, thanks for landing me with this one at such short notice. I will use that as an excuse for anything I say that is either factually wrong, inaccurate, misleading, or badly prepared.
It's astonishing how many of our people use exactly those same words.
Well, you've got broad shoulders, I'm sure. So a bit about me. I've always worked with people with learning disabilities and been a rights campaigner. And since the 90s, I've run a company of the largest supplier of accessible information in the UK, although I am finally giving that work up in the next couple of months. As an example of that sort of work, last week, I wrote an easy read document for the World Health Organization on how people with disabilities can address health inequalities in their own countries, which reminds me, actually, after the latest presidential announcements, we better invoice them quickly because I think they're going to be short of money soon, unfortunately. So anyway, that's me. And where we live now is on a houseboat on the Isle of Wight, or South Isle as it's sometimes known, in Bembridge Harbour. And we live here mainly because of the access to the sea, but also the incredible views and the areas that are surrounding us. The opportunity to live in such a special place has come about due to one of the greatest Victorian embezzlers, one Jabez Spencer Balfour. He eventually managed at great expense to build an embankment road and railway line across the old river estuary. And so here we have Jabez, who unfortunately paid for this embankment with money that people had invested in his building society. And when, instead of lending money out for people to buy their own houses, he used it to build the railway embankment, trying to capitalise on the Victorian popularity of the island. When caught out, he fled to Argentina, but was arrested by the UK detective who tracked him down, brought back here, and then imprisoned in Parkhurst, as we see here, for this multi-million-pound financial fraud. Luckily for us, this left a stretch of harbour alongside which we've been able to plonk our boats, the first being the first Bembridge lifeboat that retired in 1904. As you might imagine, living in such an area comes with quite a few restrictions that have grown over the time as the importance of the area has been recognised. So I thought I'd quickly mention some of those as they have a relevance on what we're able to do or not do down here. So here we have a map of the harbour and surrounds. So this is the embankment road here, and the railway line was behind it here. Here we have what used to be the estuary leading up to Brading, but is now all marshland and is all the bird reserve. So in front of us, in this direction, we have the Bembridge Marine Conservation Zone. This zone includes a wide range of habitats and protects various species, including these two, the short-snouted seahorse and the stalked jellyfish. Although I wouldn't have recognised that as a jellyfish initially. I've seen a seahorse, but never the jellyfish. So The harbour itself is also a Ramsar site. That's an international treaty for the conservation and sustainable use of wetlands of international importance, areas that provide crucial feeding grounds for wintering and migratory waterfowl. So that's one of the reasons why we can't, or we're not meant to do any work on our boats over the winter period, because as I was writing this yesterday, we had a couple of hundred Brent geese feeding alongside an old friend, Katrina the curlew, off the back here, who's been a visitor here for the last 5 years, amongst a great many other visitors. In addition, we're a site of special scientific interest, of course, in recognition of our significance as a habitat for wildlife. But more recently, with rises in sea levels, the Environment Agency Coastal Defence Scheme is actively working on coastal defence projects to protect the land behind the embankment from flooding. So all this area here. And indeed, if that flooded, it would go sort of straight through to Sandown, because originally Bembridge was a separate island from the rest of the Isle of Wight. I think originally it was known as the Isles of Wight. There were 3 of them. This would obviously let seawater over there, which would destroy a lot of the preservation work that has been carried out. But is also another good reason to live in a houseboat, as we actually float above these matters. And of course, we're also a conservation area as well. So behind us, as we see, is Harbour Farm, which I'm talking more about today. And we love this area. At the turn of the century, most of the land was sold to the RSPB to establish a bird reserve. And this has been a spectacular success. Then 13 years later, the Environment Agency bought up the farmhouse here and the land, 40 acres there, all the buildings there and so on, to capitalise on the success. They wanted to raise the freshwater level area of wetland on the marsh, thus attracting more wetland birds. So some of the birds, I think we are one of the best bird watching areas on the island, with some very rare and special birds on both sides of us, front and back. The marsh last year had 3 booming bitterns, so they've gradually built up over the last few years. We also have, for instance, a great white egret there, cattle egrets, ordinary ones, marsh harriers, Chetty's warblers, to name but a few. We also get regular rarer visitors, such as night and purple heron I've seen over there. Meanwhile, the Environment Agency, on the land that they bought, kept us locked out. The farmhouse, cottages, farm buildings and surrounding land were all left to go to rack and ruin under their ownership. Well, I say their ownership, yet of course it was bought with our money, with public money, and to my mind should therefore be viewed as a public, not private ownership. The public access angle was highlighted as an opportunity by the Environment Agency in recent flood survey work that they commissioned. They identified Harbour Farm here as having potential tourist and or public amenity improvements, as we see down here. So that's there. And then in addition to that, they said it was possibility there of a nature trail, giving the best chances of spotting wildlife, plus a couple of bird watching opportunities as well. So they identified here and up here further along towards the yacht club there as great areas to have bird hides. The document concluded that with the promise to have continued community engagement with more detail on these specific projects and other stuff about flooding. This gave us, really inspired us, gave a tremendous hope that others saw the areas, the opportunities that this area had in the same way that we did. So our proposal was simple, but we set up a Harbour Farm nature group community interest company to run and fundraise for the site, something that I'm pleased to say we successfully completed yesterday. We wanted as well to recruit officers to the CIC with relevant experience, and then to engage with the Environment Agency with more polished proposals with the various options that we saw there to gain access to this land. And in that range of options, the range of included things like an offer to buy the whole land for £1 to them, or at least letting us have a long lease on some or all of the land. Then, when allowed, we would quickly set up 1 or 2 of these bird hides and a nature walk through some of the grounds, as you see here, with the old trees there that are now dying due to the increased water levels. We would look at increasing the roosting opportunities in our new structures, something that's very keenly thought as necessary in the area, culminating in our bigger proposal to have a multi-organisation education visitor centre. This would host information from the large number of local conservation groups, for example, Blue Seas Protection we have here, who run shark and ray egg case surveys to check on the local populations and how they're thriving and moving about in the local seaweed areas. But going back to the real world, we quickly had some opposition from the local Environment Agency officers. Initially, they denied that they'd said anything of the sort in the flood survey report. And as I'd lost my copy, I had to challenge that. It was easily challenged with a freedom of information request that showed otherwise. And of course, that they had been saying that. But having to do that and force them to do that wasn't a great start. Then my campaigning brain came into play, wanting to escalate issues to a more senior level and get it off the island. Our campaign gathered a lot of local support with a petition signed by 1,500 local people and a quiet, non-bird disturbing demonstration of some 100 people on site. This allowed us, of course, to recruit a significant people with the relevant experience we needed and the expertise to run a venture of this nature. Unfortunately, there are a lot of them about here. The large press coverage, including several front pages, which in island terms is they're sort of pretty desperate for stories around here, and a shed catching fire will get a front page, so that wasn't difficult. But that prompted the Environment Agency to offer us the consultation that they'd originally mentioned. It's taken us a year, but that's moved on now to a meeting with us and the central agencies involved in a couple of weeks' time. So there was good news there. But apart from the public pressure, another of the levers I used here was their complaints process, backed up with an open readiness on our part to go to the Ombudsman if necessary, which of course you have to go through your local MP to do that. And we gained his support. We knew that we already had a degree of political support from the demo here, where we had the previous MP attending and also the Green Party candidate speaking. But every time this went on and things went quiet every so often. So when I got round to it again, it had been quiet, hadn't heard for a while. I tried to keep up that pressure and put us back up on the agenda. For example, when I had a visit from the chair of Ofwat a couple of months ago now, had him for a couple of hours, and we were meant to talk about sewage, which I did, but also I had free rein in what I could do sort of with him. And finding out he was also a bird watcher and a trustee for the British Trust for Ornithology, we went on a bird watching walk and talk around Harbour Farm. He coincidentally was meeting the heads of the Environment Agency and RSPB the following week and promised to bring the farm to their attention. I'm always aware of not trying to piss people off too much with this approach, but usually find people at a certain level which, at least can handle it professionally. And I wanted to use this approach after we had developed it when working years ago, way back in Slovenia after the war. There we had colleagues working with government, whilst we, with our accessible information, would work with disabled people and their organisations.
Oh, yeah, no, but
Oh.
there's too many.
So this is showing off here, this bottom-up, top-down approach would prove very successful in bringing about change people wanted. And this is a photo of a director of our firm, Richard, and I at the UN headquarters in Vienna, getting an award for the work on a new law and decision making that we'd helped influence in Kenya, or we empowered local people to influence that decision making. It gave an empowering and longer lasting approach with stronger local voices as a result. It is one we have carried on in many United Nations and World Health Organization campaign for change, from the one I mentioned earlier at the beginning of this talk about health access inequalities, to trying to keep female refugees safer in refugee camps in Syria, which was particularly distressing work. I try usually unsuccessfully to know of any blockages. I often go blindly into meetings thinking this makes perfect sense to me, only to find that that's not the case for many others who think I'm barking. Here, we know that the local RSPB officer is imposed to any form of human activity whatsoever on his site at all, unlike nearly any other bird reserve that you go to that has bird hides and walks and so on. But no matter how well we argue with examples of how well things can be done and how you can minimize or not have any disturbance, and how we can enhance people's understanding of the situation and the vulnerabilities of the site, ensuring the reasons for non-disturbance are understood for all, which I think is essential. All we get here is sort of more barbed wire going up. This has led to clashes with them, where, for instance, a footpath was blocked off, resulting in a successful application for a rights of way because of this intransigence, and that footpath has got new steps in, as you see, and reopens very shortly. But I'm always in favour, of course, of looking at in detail the guidance that people are following. And this is from a statement of biodiversity priorities. Ecologically, we want to ensure all elements of this circle from the official guidance are enacted locally. Obviously, we have a focus on the cultural aspects of this circle. So we see here we've got the basic provisioning of water supply, materials and so on, the regulating, supporting their healthy soils and what have you, which is why, of course, we wouldn't want any seawater getting in there. But we're more interested in the cultural aspects here, the physical health and mental well-being, tourism, knowledge and learning, recreation, having a sense of place, inspiration, and the spiritual and religious connections to the land. So obviously that's our focus, the cultural aspects, but equally we must remain very aware of the need to do that in synergy with wildlife and all the other points that are made. A quick example, we know of the mental and physical health benefits of contact with nature, as they talk about here. And we plan to work with the national RSPB's Nature Prescriptions Programme, where they are have piloted there a nature prescription programme where you presumably they talk to local health people about the benefits of contact with nature that we know happen. So we'd like to work productively with any opposition, and hopefully we'll be able to do that here in the future. Currently, though, looking to bypass that by supporting national guidance, and specifically in this example, the RSPB's national aims, and they're a good example of this, and many others of their national governance that are relevant for us here. One of our board members has been working successfully on this well-being contact with nature as a useful approach with several health benefits. Something people will find harder to argue against, given, as I say, it is this national policy. And this is, for instance, where our nature trail could come in very useful in providing that contact in a non-disturbing but beautiful environment. I'm a firm believer in the need for ecological education if we are to ensure our futures, and more broadly, I'd like to offer those opportunities for younger children with some forest school facilities. That's sort of all the rage in schools now. We have Fridays off going down the forest for activities there. And there are lots of central grounds in the farm that can be used for that, with barn areas and so on. Whilst older children taking the new GCSE in ecology could gain a lot of relevant information from the Multi-Agency Information Centre and from experiencing this very precious location. Bird watchers would gain access to previously hidden areas with carefully placed hides, and there are lots of examples of how best to do that and so on without interfering with wildlife. I remember it was it Slimbridge went to the other, where you've got a hide opposite the kingfisher bank, and very successfully the two can come together without disturbing the wildlife. With these public recreation and learning opportunities, we hope comes change, better health, respect for our area and wildlife, and information on what to do about it, amongst many other benefits. We are fortunate enough to, at this time, have a consultation on the island's local nature recovery strategy. This is a national programme, so covering the whole of England, and presents an important opportunity to influence actions in all of our areas. It's done centrally through a map, as you see here, and you can click on what you want to show, and there's a range of suggested targets and so on, and actions in each of these areas. And you can see here, I'm just with a couple tick, we've got quite a lot of actions in the harbour already, and there are more than that. So there's a lot to look at. They target actions in locations where they're most needed and where they provide the best environmental outcomes. The strategies will help to join up with national efforts to reverse the decline in biodiversity. It's into this strategy that I hope to insert our objectives to ensure the proper cultural actions are also included locally. Something it seems to be lacking at the moment. I've only just started looking at this in the last couple of days, but it seems that going back to our wheel, that's been forgotten about in our area, and we want to try and bring them back to that central guidance to show that it's considered properly. So how are we doing? Finally, a view of what more of us might be able to see in the future. This is a pair of white-tailed eagles that we're so lucky to have pretty resident locally. Indeed, we're hoping that they might be breeding, although it didn't happen last year. So, but fingers crossed for this year. This is a pair of the eagles I spent an hour watching hunting a Canada goose. And I say a pair, and they work in unison. People have pointed out there's only one there, but of course there's this other chap over here on the right-hand side doing a sort of flanking operation. They sort of bounced about a bit, and one moved and the other one moved and so on. And then they pounced, one of them pounced on the goose. We live in a very special area, I know that, and I appreciate that. But it's an area that not only needs public access to it in a safe and secure way, but also a system that provides information to properly protect it for the future. And so on that note, I think, Graham, that I'll finish that there. Thank you very much.
That was magnificent, Andrew. Thank you very
Oh,
much for throwing up
okay.
something on a spur of the moment, just like that. Remarkable.
You're very welcome.
I hope that you've generated lots of questions in people, and people will please stick their hands up if they'd like to ask questions. I'm going to start the ball rolling with one, which is, does the local nature reverse strategy come with any funding, or is it just, this is what we'd like to do and you can get on with it?
I haven't seen funding in there, but then I've only started looking. It's there's a lot in there, and I've only just started looking at it. No, I haven't got to the funding page. I presume not.
Do you happen to know which part of government has issued this? I mean, in our case, it's the Isle of Wight Council, but they're operating under a national strategy.
Again, sorry, yeah. I haven't, again, I haven't had time to delve into it properly. It's only just come across my desk the day before yesterday.
Okay, well, that's satisfied my inquiries. Thank you very much. Anybody else who has got a question for Andrew, please? I'm not seeing any hands at the moment. There is a reactions facility in Zoom that you can use if you'd like to take up time. Harriet, where you go, and you're on mute at the moment. You're still on mute, Harriet.
What can we try and do to progress this? I mean, how do we go forward from here?
Well, in terms of the Harbour Farm access, you mean? Yeah. Well, I think it depends on the outcome of our meeting with them in the next couple of weeks. We're going there to talk to more senior people. Well, they're coming here who, in the contact with them, they're very open to the possibilities here. And I think, obviously we'll put the case to them of what we want and the options, and is to discuss the possibilities. So hopefully they're going to pick up on one or more of those possibilities, and we're in that sense we're ready to jump now. We've got the community interest company ready. We know that we can get a good degree of funding from local sources, so we're ready there. I think once we have potential ways forward there, it's to work with local people to ensure that we're doing that. It's a problem with the RSPB here locally that we haven't been able to work together with them on anything.
No,
but
Andrew, can I
we've got to try hard on that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and I'd be thoroughly sort of behind you and everything that they're trying to do with this strategy. But I'm afraid I'm going to have to leave because I need to deliver Brabs to somewhere else. So please, can I have a recording?
Sure.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you for coming, Harriet.
Thanks, Harriet. Nice to see you.
John, would you like to take over, please, and let everybody know where you are, because we're not all familiar?
Yeah, thanks very much. That's very interesting to me. We live in the Wye Valley, near the Forest of Dean, and I've got two projects that I'd like your advice on. First of all, we own some woodland and fields in the forest, and we're going for a rewilding project, and it's all about really how you design this rewilding project. You get paid extra if you invite the public in, which I wanted to do anyway. And it's really how you set up this, how you actually deal with the public, how you lay down the rules, the ethos of what you're going to do. The other point of it is I own 1/8 of the share of the Redbrook Village store, the shop, which has been going for about 10 years, and we don't own the shop, but we own the business, and the shop and the flats above it are being sold. And to my dismay, the owners, are about 8 of us, They just want to stop the business and sell up to the next person who comes along. But I don't think that's going to be very easy where we live. We live in quite there's not much traffic going past the road, and it mainly just serves the local communities. And I want to set up a community interest company to run the shop, and change it from its limited company status. Are you able to give me some advice on both of these issues? One about how we involve the public, how we lay down the rules for access to a grant-led rewilding scheme, and secondly, how your experiences in setting up a community interest company.
Firstly, I am no expert in any of this stuff. I'm finding out things as I go along, but also it sounds as if you're in many ways far more advanced than we are. With some of our ideas that we've had and that we're looking at with public access is with the farm itself. No, firstly, going back to the footpath, one of the things I'm doing there is putting up some signs reminding people about the Wildlife Act and disturbance, and whether you're potentially breaking the law or not. That's particularly with regards to dogs and dog walking and dog shit, that there are traces of dog poo in we've got a couple of saline lagoons, first of all, in this area that are very precious and need protecting. And so we're reinforcing the notion that dogs have to be kept under control there. Not only does it need to be picked up, and we're getting a dog poo bin put in there by the local parish council, thanks to Harriet, who's just left us, but also we'll have signs up there reminding people. It was sort of similar signs that I don't know when Rishi Sunak was caught with his dog off the lead in Hyde Park and about disturbing the bird life there, that drew me attention to the wording that's useful there. But with the farm, we're thinking about whether to have a membership organisation that allows access. So we're basing that on a bird reserve, what's it called, Lady Walk Reserve, I think, that has a very precious reserve. And how they do it is a membership where you pay, I don't know, whatever it is, £25 a year, and you get the code to the gate. And obviously you can have all sorts of electronic gates now and so on to allow access, but with the security there. So that's certainly one option there that we want to look at with the Environment Agency to ensure that we've got the controls that they would want in place. So I think that's quite a useful one, as well as a fundraiser in that, to that extent. And that'll be a clear area where dogs are not allowed at all on or off a lead. So that will be a bit of a gated community there. With regards to the CIC, that's pretty simple. It's like a limited company with a few other things that you have to fulfill in there. So you have to do sort of a CIC, what do they call it? Declaration on formation of the CIC, just to say the broad outline of what you're doing, and that has to be approved. And then you have, with your articles of association, that you're doing things in the right way, and that, for instance, if you go bust, that there's another like-minded organisation that any funds will go to. So it's pretty simple. Your liability is still, like with a limited company, is only £1. So it's a useful sort of vehicle to run in the same way as a limited company. Everything else is the same. So it's a useful vehicle to do this and prove that you're a legit organisation. It sounds a bit like the Archers, doesn't it, with all the rewilding and the community shop and so on.
I know, yeah.
I think I get most of my guidance from there.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. That's great. Yes.
Gary, good afternoon. Would you like to carry on, please?
Thank you, Graham. And yeah, thank you, Andrew. That's a very interesting presentation. You ended your presentation mentioning the future. I was just wondering, I mean, looking at that site, what plans do you have for dealing with the climate change adaptations coming up? Because, I mean, you look at that site and the obvious one that seemed to me is potential for sea level rise. Do you have any plans in place to deal with future climate change
Yep.
adaptations?
Yes, we're on the Environment Agency's list for raised seawalls. There, we go straight through to the other side of the peninsula. So Bembridge is on a peninsula, really, and it was cut off completely. It was a separate island. So there's all low-lying land down round to Sandown, the other side. So there's a lot of flood defence work going on there at Sandown, and they're looking at raising our embankment as well. Whether they've got the funds for that or not in the next few years before it floods, I don't know. It's a bit of a race against time there. The other issue, of course, is increased flooding in the area. And they've come under a lot of criticism for flooding this extra area, which is in effect now a floodplain, keeping extra water here rather than letting it out through the river into the harbour, and causing flooding further back upstream. They vehemently deny that that's causing flooding further back, than saying that would happen anyway with the increased water flows that are coming through, and that the sluice gates are always opened on time regularly. So that has to be better managed, and as well as people being told and shown what they're doing to show that water management is happening. There are other opportunities there of we've got sort of some straight cut rivers, and looking at a bit more meandering brought back in, and opportunities for flooding sort of further up. We talked about beavers at one time, but I think that's been kiboshed the other day. I saw, if I remember rightly. I don't know if anybody else knows about that, but yeah, I think beavers have been knocked on the head. But there's opportunities further upstream, really, to maximise water storage up there, and we need to look at.
Thank you. I throw the floor open to anybody else who wishes to ask Andrew a question before we all break for lunch. Or whatever. Nobody else? Okay, well.
Can I just say thank you very much to Andrew for all that work, and for bringing Harbour Farm to the attention of local Bembridge people, and for progressing a really interesting public-facing role for that wetland, that ecological area. And I see Ali has answered Graham's question, who requested these local nature resource strategies. And if the answer really is DEFRA with Natural England, I fear for any future, although I know that Dorset has had to produce a recovery plan, but they've done it in conjunction with the wildlife trusts. And you know, I mean, the government have been cutting back on Natural England. I don't think DEFRA is particularly at the top of their list. But so I kind of think that anything that individuals do on a local level is equally as important as anything that comes from any government source.
I think you're absolutely right, Mary. And we know that funding is going to be crap over the next few years, as it has been. You know, the Environment Agency has been cuts on cuts for forever and a day. Yeah. And it's like, I suppose we took over the running of our local library because it was going to be closed. Yeah. And I think if we're going to do anything, we probably need to do something ourselves here. And indeed, one of the freedom of information requests I had about meetings, I learned how the Environment Agency locally, they, as I said, the buildings there are going to rack and ruin, but they're empty. But having been empty for 10 years plus or whatever, they're now paying 4 times the council tax that they haven't got a budget for. They want to demolish it. They haven't got the budget for it, and so on and so on. So each point, I just want to come in and say, well, look, we can do that for you, and give it to us, and we'll demolish the buildings, or we'll make use of them. We'll do this or that. We've got the ecologists to do the ecology surveys that you haven't got the money for, etc., etc. So
Right.
hopefully that's another lever on our part to come in and being very helpful with
Yes.
their budgets, but also recognising the reality. And what do you do about that? You campaign government for releasing more funds going through there. It's not going to work. Let's do something ourselves, and this little area, just a little bit, to help ease local budgets, but also to open up all these opportunities that we see there and work with them productively.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very dangerous words, Andrew. You just talked yourself into sort of an annual update to us all, so we can see how you're getting on. Anybody else, please? Oops, sorry, John. No. Just for people who are looking to next week, we've got a lady from Charnley who is making major progress with their net zero projects. So she'll be telling us next week how they're getting on and how they did it and what her recommendations are to us to achieve the same ends. So I really appreciate everyone's time. Thank you very much. A specific thank you to Andrew. Thank you again for helping us out with a very rapid step in. And I hope to see people in the future. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.